Welcome back, friends, to Pilgrims Digress. I am an American by birth. I am a Southerner by blood, but a New Englander by choice. Spring has sprung. I've chosen a little softer intro, and I think it's fitting because our topic today is self-care, taking care of yourself, and all the different activities that you can do to make yourself the best person that you can be. Here at Pilgrims Digress, I like to keep it wide open when it comes to topics. And I especially love it when the expert and the person I'm talking to is from New England. And this is true about Diana from Watered Grass Podcast. She is a true blue New Englander. She currently lives in Connecticut. And I'm excited to have her. Before then, I want to let you guys in on a new thing I'm trying out. We're gearing up for the end of the school year. I'll have a little bit more time on my hands as we move through the growth of this show. And I'm starting up a Patreon. Now, the only thing that I'm asking for with a Patreon is $2 a month. We'll get you extra episodes, outtakes, and some of the extra stuff that I talked with my guests about. Jeremy and I talked a lot about Game of Thrones episode 4, I think. Nate and I talked about some old stories as well. And I want to update everybody on how my summer's going. Instead of plugging that into the big show and making it so much more longer, I thought it would be cool to have a Patreon page where people could help support me and get that extra content as well. So it's $2 a month, and you'll get the extra shows. I'll be gunning for 1 or 2 a week, and I'll be updating you on my kids and my family and what we're doing over the summer. I have a lot of big plans with even more content in another channel, and that money is only going to go to the few subscriptions I use to produce this show. So this is not I'm not trying to make a living out of this. This is a nice, fun hobby that I can share with everybody else that either knows me or knowing of me, and that's the show spreading. And just something to cover the expenses of the podcasting hosting software and the software I use to do the online interviews. It's not much at all. So join if you can, if you want. If you can't do that, feel free to share the show on iTunes, Spotify. Tell your friends. Give me a 5-star rating on iTunes so I can climb up those ranks as well. And look for that Patreon link on pilgrimsdigress.com or on any of my social media accounts on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. All right, let's get to Diana. She is the host of Watered Grass Podcast. Very, very smart, intelligent, great conversationalist. And I learned a lot just from talking to her. And I was clearly ready to admit anything I didn't know. And I was really excited to learn a couple of the new ways that people can be making sure that they are their best selves in both mind, body, and spirit. So let's get right after it. Thanks for listening once again, and happy spring. Hi, Diana. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How's it going, Aaron?
It's great. I'm enjoying this weather and looking forward to hearing more about your show and what you're talking about with your show. So right now we're on Pilgrims Digress, and I want to kind of get going with the things that I normally do with my guests and talk first and foremost your experience and your relationship with New England as a whole.
New England is my whole life. Born and raised. I was born in Connecticut and lived in New Britain all through high school, which is right in the middle, kind of near Hartford. And then for undergrad and then eventually grad school, I lived in Worcester, Massachusetts. I went to Clark undergrad, did Worcester State, and then my job kind of started with that. And I stayed there for a couple more years until my boyfriend managed to convince me to come back. And now I'm back in Connecticut in Cheshire. So I haven't lived anywhere else.
Excellent. So does that make you a Red Sox kind of gal rather than Yankees?
You know what? It's controversial in this part of the state in Connecticut, but because of the Massachusetts time, yes. I am that.
Excellent. You are now approved for my podcast.
All right, I can stay. Good.
Not being from New England, I think a lot about the opportunities children have here, and maybe that I didn't have. For example, one day in elementary school, there was going to be rain. This is when I lived in Maryland.
Yeah.
There was going to be snow, and they canceled school, and there was rain. So that was like very confusing for me as a child because there was no school, but there was no snow.
That's interesting.
And then when it did snow, there was a blizzard of 96 down there. And when it did snow 2 to 3 feet, it was Armageddon, essentially. Here, it's a weekend. But there, it was Armageddon. So tell me about your childhood here in New England and what that was like and how that may have been different from other people.
Sure. I think, especially being in this part of New England, in Connecticut, it was this interesting dynamic because we're halfway between Boston and New York, which I definitely enjoyed as a child. My dad was a huge traveler, so we were popping all over New England. But between those two major cities, a lot of different experiences, and they're very different cities, which is kind of that split that you get down Connecticut. So I did enjoy the fact that you can get to so many other states and so many other places within a day. In New England, we always would go in the fall and go up to either like the White Mountains or the Berkshires and do the family trip to go look at foliage, even though there's some right next to you, like you have to do the drive to go at least like an hour. But there's usually some like very New Englandy, like cider. We definitely would drive like hours to get to big displays of pumpkins in the fall. I don't know if that's just a New England thing, but it seems like it could be. New England, it's this interesting, piece where you do have, parts that are much more liberal for New England. And being in Massachusetts for about 9 years, I got some really interesting experiences while I was there because Massachusetts has been a lot of firsts in the last decade and a half. So having the experience of, being in the first state where, say, same-sex marriage was legalized and seeing those changes and being in a state where that was so celebrated was a phenomenal experience. Growing up in the part of Connecticut I did, it's a much more urban part of Connecticut, but there's so many different parts of New England that I'm really grateful for the amount of exposure I got to so many different multicultural experiences, and just how open-minded, and it helped me see, the beauty in all different parts and walks of life, which I guess kind of put me where I am, both career, like working as a school psychologist and wanting to, get other children to realize that the beauty in all of that and making every child feel appreciated for who they are. And also, I guess, the podcast piece too of, all different walks of life are out there and we can all find happiness in our own ways, just finding what kind of works for you.
Awesome. I love that. That's great. When I moved here, I noticed the same thing.
Yeah.
It's multicultural, it's diverse, and there's diversity in thinking and belief. And it's, people don't talk about it a lot, but there's different viewpoints everywhere. And it was really kind of a culture shock to me when I came up from Maryland. I lived in Illinois before that.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of everybody's, especially in Illinois, everybody's the same. They look the same, if you know what I'm saying.
Consistency.
Right. So tell me about your podcast. I was messing around on social media. I saw what you had going on and I messaged you on the Instagrams.
Yeah.
As what people say. And I was really interested in what you were up to and how ingrained into New England culture you were with the show and everything. So tell me a little bit about what you got going on over at Watered Grass.
Watered Grass. So I've been doing this for about a little over a year now, almost a year and a half. And it's a podcast that's based around talking about different wellness, mental health, self-care services. They're all different things under the same umbrella that exist. And it's a pretty localized podcast. I've had a few guests that happen to be from, other parts of the country that call in, but they do more nationally based things. But for the most part, there are things that are in Connecticut. I've had people from Massachusetts because I think part of the conversation about mental health and wellness is, letting people know how many different options are out there, especially, if you've ever had any obstacles to work through yourself. And I do, and I talk about them on the show. Sometimes it's really tough to make that first step. There's all this research on reasons why people don't go and do it. And part of it is that fear that either, they're going to go and, like, for example, I always use the yoga class example. You're going to walk in and everybody else knows what they're doing and you're going to be too embarrassed to actually get the benefits of it.
Sure.
Or just knowing where to start for how to find things is completely overwhelming if you're already having a tough time with whatever's going on. Just doing a Google search can give you almost too many answers. So the goal of the podcast is to let people know what's out there and also normalize the conversation. So I have the people that are on the show talk about, what do you do for self-care? Because it's something that everybody does in some way or another. There aren't just experts and then the people that need the experts. So it's a lot of fun. I mean, I reflect a lot on my own self-care practice, and I like the idea of using a podcast for it because you can listen to it in the privacy of your own home. So, people do still get worried about what other people will think if they go out and they get a therapist, or, they decide that they're going to start regularly doing like acupuncture to treat something. So if they hear about it and they get kind of that personal experience, get to know the personality of the person, it makes it a lot more approachable.
That's great. From the couple of shows that I listen to, I have a list I sent you about things that I am familiar with and things that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is to give you a chance to explain, maybe to somebody who isn't as familiar with all of it, what's going on, and maybe bring some new things to light for somebody who doesn't know. I've been interested in acupuncture for a while, but I just can't figure out where to get it. But I know what that is.
Yeah.
I know people that go to get a massage. I know what essential oils are.
Yeah.
I've heard of the crystals.
Yeah.
Those seem interesting. And I've definitely heard of self-care in regards to making sure that what you're doing, that you're intentionally making sure that you're healthy.
Yeah.
Because I know when I'm healthy, I'm allowed to I'm able to influence and make that happen for everybody else.
Sure.
So what I'd like to hear from you about, and I've seen before just the word, and I purposely didn't go look these up so that you could explain it to me.
All right.
The first one is, I don't know how to say it right, but what's funny is that there's actually a town, my brother lives in this town in Massachusetts called Barry, and it's spelled the same. Is it? Yep. Do you say this the same way?
No, it's Bar. It is
okay.
Bar.
Barre.
Also, something Massachusetts is famous for, things are just not pronounced the way that they're written.
No, we live right next to Leicester. Which is not said that way at all.
Leicester, Leominster, Gloucester, even Worcester. It's just, it doesn't follow the phonetic rules. But anyways, I'm getting off topic. So Bar is based in the principles of ballet. Because there's so much core work and other things that people don't realize go into it. So it's catching in popularity right now as a fitness class. I've seen it popping up a lot in yoga studios as an alternative. So it still, as the name implies, has the bar on the wall, and you're doing some of the different ballet postures and poses and moves, but they are also kind of coupled with a fitness aspect of it. So you're holding them for longer, you're using your body weight. There's a ton of leg work. I limped out of my first few classes because I do try a lot of the stuff that's on the show. But it's a great alternative for if you're somebody who wants to build muscle and you enjoy that form of exercise, but not necessarily maybe knowing what to do with weights because it's a teacher-led class. And it's one of those that they adjust it for all levels, where she'll give you a basic move. And then, if you want to up the ante, you can try this. Or if you have modifications because you have any kind of injury or something like this, try it this way.
Interesting. Is there... I'm going to ask some dumb questions. Is there jumping involved? Is there jumping involved?
Sometimes there can be, but it's not like the intense ballet, like where you see them jump up and do like the foot thing. Sure. It's more of like the plies and stuff. So, cause then you get into that squat posture, and it's huge on the posture piece of it. So like,
I get it.
The straight back, like that straight from the top. As a previous like ballet kid, and when I was little, it all comes back muscle memory, but it's more of a workout than you would anticipate when you walk into it.
Like I'm imagining, this may be a horrible metaphor or whatever, but back in my day, in the high school football days, we used to have to do plyometrics.
Yeah.
And we would be jumping up and down on boxes. This is what it reminds me of. Or we'd have to hold positions for, we do wall sits, stuff like that, where you're building that kind of core stuff. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm thinking is. I'll look it up later.
Yeah. Now that you know, you can look it up.
Yeah. It seems pretty interesting to me.
Yeah.
Especially, well, you said there's a difference between that and yoga.
Yes.
What would make a person choose bar over yoga?
So bar does not, it certainly has some mental health benefits because any exercise does, right? You get those endorphins going. Yeah. Yoga has like so many other parts to it. There's a whole philosophy in the way you live your life. So it's not just what you do on the mat versus bar. It's, bar, you go into the class to get those fitness benefits. Yoga is something that you practice like throughout your day, and part of it is the practice on the mat. So size of bar and how it, and then yoga is like you live yoga.
Yeah. I did yoga some years ago before I had kids, because that's when I had time. when P90X was all the rage.
Yeah.
And there was a day of yoga of it. And I remember it was like one of my favorite days.
Yeah.
And just feeling like it was a different kind of mind body than any other kind of workout.
Yeah.
And, it was interesting. I'm still like imagining a day where I can have time to do something like that again.
Well, now with YouTube, there's a bunch of options, and some of them are like 5 minutes. So.
Oh yeah. My kids do it at school. My son, my oldest 6-year-old, he does it
that's awesome.
sometimes, and he knows some of the.
He can teach you. You can do yoga with him.
That'll be fun. All right, let's talk about the next one I'm unfamiliar with. There's bar and now Reiki.
Nailed it. Reiki. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Reiki is for those that believe in that whole thing where there's energy in the body, right? And energy gets stuck. So it kind of looks like chi, or when you talk about acupuncture, helping things move around. Reiki is similar. It's channeling energy. So basically, there are people who are trained in Reiki. You speak to them kind of about what your hangups are. It could be physical pain. It could be more emotional pain. And I actually got to experience it. So on one of my episodes, I had, her name is Robin Hausman. She invited me in to try a session so I could like see what I was talking about with her. And you basically lay on a massage table, but rather than actually touching you, they use their hands to kind of move the energy around. It can be coupled with like a guided meditation so that mentally you're kind of on the path that they're going. So it's a similar kind of setup to a massage, but it's hands-free.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I already know what Reiki is. I do it to my kid to go to sleep. I take my hand. Seriously, I take my hand and I put it over his feet and I go, all right, when I put my hand over your body, I'm like 6 inches. I go, that part of your body can't move anymore. And I just go real slow across his body like that.
See, you're Reiki.
He loves it. Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I don't know if I made that up myself or not. I'm too old to remember that stuff, but he loves it. I think it helps him chill out.
Yeah.
That's cool. Now I'm interested in that too. Reiki, bar, and Reiki.
Yep.
Is there anything else that I don't know about that we haven't mentioned that would be cool to explain to my audience?
Let me think. I've had a lot of life coaches coming onto the show, which is an interesting thing that's starting to pick up. Different than a therapist. So therapist, you go in and you have your, and there's so many different kinds of therapy that it's hard to kind of generalize what a session looks like. But life coaches are kind of increasing in number right now where they're more kind of goal oriented, kind of helping you find your best self and how to show it. So they can give you a little bit more, they give you more structure and like, do this versus a lot of therapists. It's more of you kind of discover it on your own. So I've had a lot of that popping up and they're for all different things. You can do them for career, or if you feel like stuck in life, you're having struggles with relationships. Sometimes they tie in like food and body image, that kind of stuff. So that's something that comes up a lot. A couple different subscription services. Those are the big things happening with self-care right now, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, which I think, in general, you're seeing them everywhere because people just are so squished for time nowadays. The more convenience you can make in something, the more likely people are going to be to use it, right? So like for the crystals, there's the Crystal Council guys that send out one that's based around your needs. Or I had one that was just a self-care box where quarterly they just send you different products to try that are meant for either the body or the mind, which I think is huge. That's kind of why I do the podcast is let's make it as accessible as possible so people are actually able to do it.
Awesome. All right. I have a couple more questions for you about your topics as well. Let's see. How are self-care and other services providers doing in New England? What's the vibe going on right now? You've touched on a little bit more, but what are you seeing happening?
I think in general, New England is because sometimes it's a little bit more progressive in those ways. And because it's so multicultural, it has a lot going on for it. Like talking compared to friends that live in other parts of the country, New England, you're going to find more of those services within a town or a city. The things that are doing the best right now, what I'm seeing is yoga. Yoga is everywhere. It's in gyms. It's not just yoga studios anymore. Meditation is starting to pick up and you see more like wellness co-ops popping up, which is a great idea for these small businesses because instead of doing things individually, it's kind of a wellness center and you can go and try out different businesses and they can promote each other and do that kind of stuff, which is cool. So I think in terms of how the country is doing, I think the only place that is probably beating us at that is California because they are like far and ahead with this whole like get on the wellness bandwagon thing. But yeah, I think New England is making it more accessible in most areas. I don't know about the more rural parts of New England, but at least in the suburban towns and cities, you can find multiple studios or what you're looking for.
Yeah, I can speak to Central Mass. A lot of the counties here are, so to speak. But you can still find exactly what we talked about. One of those co-ops is in my brother's town in Barry.
Yeah.
Not Bar, but Barry. And they're popping up just out in the country as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right. It's moving along in the atmosphere. The more progressive atmosphere really allows for that. Is self-care, all this stuff, is it mostly a female thing?
Unfortunately, right now, it seems like more females are open to the idea. And that could be a whole podcast in itself. Then my psychology side comes out. But yeah, I think, a majority of my listeners are female. But that's not to say that there aren't males who are into it or in the field. I've had a number of really great guests on the show who are everything from I had a male yoga teacher who got into it because he teaches yoga and mindfulness for men who've been in the military or working in the fire departments, police departments, all those high crisis jobs, which is really cool. And a lot of them I've noticed it either comes through you needed it for whatever you went through, like in your job or your experiences. So then you become the teacher. Or I also see a lot of males coming in through the fitness realm, especially like yoga and stuff like that. They get it to kind of balance that yin and yang of like you're doing the weightlifting and, like the heavy work during the week. And then you need yoga to kind of stretch the body back out and make sure that those muscles don't tense up. And then it's kind of like your gateway to self-care.
Yeah, I can see that. What else? Let's see. Here we go. If any males are interested, what advice would you have for them to get started?
My advice would be don't be worried about what anyone is going to think when you walk into the class. Almost every yoga class that I go to or fitness class, there usually is 1 to maybe 2 guys. And I've never experienced a class where anyone has been put on the spot, like, let's all turn and applaud for the male who has arrived, But I could understand that it would be very intimidating to walk into that setting. There's nothing about the classes that are inherently aimed at females. So I think, do your research first, find out what interests you the most, and then don't worry about who's going to be in the classes because it is such a mix because everyone's there for different reasons. So don't be worried about it. And if anything, go on YouTube, check out videos of what you're getting into, and you can get a sense of like what the demographic is.
Awesome. Hey, what's the future for Watered Grass? What do you got coming up? What can people look forward to?
I got a lot of exciting stuff coming up. So there's a lot of new episodes coming on. I'm having a hypnotherapist come on, which is interesting. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. Which I didn't know a lot about. And so it was really interesting to find out like what it is and how many different things. And she like hypnotizes herself like daily, which is kind of cool. Yeah. And then there's a lot of events coming up that I'll be partnering with Kate Pelletier, who was on the show from Little Wave Yoga, doing a summer solstice event with like a meditation about letting your light shine. So Watered Grass is getting beyond the mic in the next couple of months and doing a lot of events. So I'll be posting on Instagram and the website with everything that's coming up.
Awesome. All right. I like to end my conversations with my have you evers in New England.
Okay.
I may skip a few for time's sake, but feel free to expand, and then we will expire. Have you ever tapped trees for maple syrup, Diana?
No, I wish I have. Maybe I have to put on the list now.
You ever been ice fishing?
I have not, but I'm not a big fisher in general. So,
you ever been to one of the New England games?
Oh yeah, I go to. I love going to Celtics games.
Oh really?
I grew up playing basketball, Celtics family. So I've done Celtics, and I love a good Red Sox game. I don't know. Yeah. There's something about the whole experience of going to the field.
Mm-hmm. It's an old stadium.
Yeah.
You ever been snowmobiling?
Snowmobiling, no, but it's on the list.
You ever seen a ghost?
Oh, does feeling a ghost count?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So, yearly, my friends from college and I go to Salem, and we've done like the tours, and you never know if it's just getting into your own head, but you go on these haunted tours and they tell you the signs. And one of them was if the woman, like, she would pinch you, the ghost. And I felt some pinching, but I wasn't the only one. So, like, pretty sure it happened. I'm
going to go history teacher on you right now. I'll talk about Salem for a second.
Yeah.
I had a professor once tell me that he believed that when the girls talked about getting pinched, he thought they were telling the truth because these girls would work as servants in the houses, and automatically just by society structure, the women of the houses would be extremely mean to them all the
Yeah.
time. And so he thought the girls were just getting pinched, like straighten up.
Yeah.
But they flipped it around and made everybody a spirit, and so on and so forth. It was interesting to me, at least.
Yeah.
Dinah, have you ever not drink Dunkin' Donuts?
Ooh, when I was in Worcester, I used to love Dippin' Donuts.
Yes, sir.
Oh, Dippin's so good. I miss their iced coffee.
I went there this morning.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I loved. They had it was like a peanut butter banana iced coffee, which
Yeah,
sounds
there's some crazy
it's
stuff.
So good.
Yeah.
And Boston Donuts. I don't know if you've ever been there.
Yeah, there's one in Fitchburg where I work.
Connecticut, unfortunately, is lacking in the local coffee donut shop. So that's near and dear to my heart.
You have been hiking in the White Mountains. Have you been hiking in the White Mountains?
Yeah, I think it's also a New England thing that you have to know at least one person who's got family that has a cabin in the White Mountains. I've never done any of the huge ones, but while you're there, you inevitably go on some hike.
Right. And what's the most New England thing you ever did?
It's got to be. There was one day that I went to a Celtics game in Boston, and it was pretty close to the payoffs. It was actually back when Shaq was on the team. Yeah, which is an experience because Shaq is I would be in the nosebleeders, but because he's so tall, you could almost see his facial features from way back there. And then the next day we stayed there, slept over, and the next day was the Boston St. Patrick's Day parade, which is
Did you make it home alive?
Yeah, yes. This was when I was much younger. This was right after college, where you can survive through that weekend. I couldn't imagine doing it now, but it was an experience. It was a lot of green. That's
great. Hey, would you ever move away? And if you did, where would you go?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know. I know internally I probably wouldn't move because of my family. But I do love, one of my best friends lives in Denver, and I just love that landscape of the mountains and just how much outdoor activity there is available. But I don't think I'd ever go that far.
Yeah, not that far. All right. Hey, excellent. This was a great conversation. I can't wait to look more at your Instagram and listen to more of your shows. And I hope anybody that's listening here would do the same. Head over to Watered Grass. Is it everywhere you can get podcasts?
Yeah, it's on all the usual apps: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher.
Me too, yeah.
You
want to give them your social media info too?
Yeah, so if you want to check out the site, it's www.wateredgrass.com. You'll see lots of upcoming stuff if you go on the Instagram, which is just @wateredgrass. And then on Facebook, it's @wateredgrass, the podcast, where you can also find upcoming events that previous guests have going on. So people who've been on the show post what they have coming up if you want to check them out.
Oh, very good. Awesome. Hey, thanks for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot, and looking forward to seeing what else you're doing on the Instagram and on your show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My first interview. This was fun.